Alright, so today we're doing character sprite sheets. We're going to kind of take a look at this simple basic game just to kind of get an idea of the movements and what the sprite sheet actually looks like. So if I go ahead and enter the game, we can see we've got our character standing here. And if we let him stand there, he's got an idle animation. He goes from this front to like a right standing position. Right? We've got the movements of him looking like he's walking. And then we've also got the jump. And when he dies, we also have the little dying position. So that's kind of the basic of it. This level has already been set up, and just with some basic being able to get items and kill the enemies. Enemies, these little purple slimes, they actually currently right now only have 2 sprites. It's just that makes it look like a slight wiggle to it, and then it's moving back and forth. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the sprite sheets. So you can just type it in on Google, research sprite sheets, and you'll see lots of examples. They got all kinds of sprite sheets from everything. We're going to take a look at a couple specific ones. So we have this one from like a Bomberman type game, so we got different sprites for the enemies, some little fire guy. We got for the game that we just took a look at, here's a sample sprite sheet for it. We've got the running around, this kind of duck position. We've got the jumping here, and then we've also the hurt position. And then the stand, the front, and the idle. So I felt like this was a pretty good example of a character sprite sheet. They've separated it into several different lines to make it easy. So the first one, we've got the walk cycle sprites. We have the run cycle on the second line. The third line, we have like a jumping cycle. And then we have some extras here. We got like a climbing position, like a ladder, and then we got climbing up on like a box. And then we have 2 sprites for getting hurt. So we've got the sprite like he just got hit, and then it flashing red so it can go back and forth. And then we've got the if the character dies or gets wounded or whatnot, you have him like falling down on the ground, and then his arm looks like it slaps the ground. So to kind of see some animations of it, there's the getting hurt. We have the ducking. And then we have a jumping. So the more individual sprites that you have, the smoother the animation will look. The less that you have, the more choppy it will. So you can see some pieces look a little smooth and then some really choppy. So that gives you kind of the basic breakdown of that. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a sprite sheet here that I've created. I've kind of divided it up with my grid lines. I've actually subdivided more than twice. That way I can have a larger area because my character is going to be flinging his arms and whatnot. So we can hide that for now. So the first thing that we need to do is actually have a beginning character to start with. So we're going to start with that simple basic character. And typically the way this works is we may need to actually break the pieces down to make it easier to create the sprites. So what we have here is all the pieces broken down. So if we take a look at this, we've got the eyeballs, we've got the head, including his little space ring around his head. We've got the body piece. We've got the legs. We can take a look at that separately. There's the legs. And then we've got the arms. Right? So I could go in and do the arms separately and the legs separately. That's fine. It doesn't really matter so much. So once we have that, we can simply duplicate this and edit it. So I've grouped it together, and the way to actually do that, ungroup this, is once you select your layers, you can either right click. Let's see, where is it? Well, we can just simply click the folder icon down here to group it, create new group, or we can do Control G, creates a group, and I'm going to call this P1 for player 1 underscore front, because this is the front position. So then I'm going to duplicate this down, and I'm going to call this one idle, and I'm just going to move it out. So now what I can do is maybe I want to start with the legs, and we know if I control click the box I can select them so we can see where the legs are. The easiest way is I can just literally select the legs, and I could move each piece if I wanted to. So if we hide the other pieces, there's the legs, I could move it wherever I want it to. I kind of need to see where the body is. So in this case, I can't hide everything, being that I want to be able to rotate. So this would be, if I wanted to create this position now, I can rotate it, put it where I need to, select the other piece, put it where I need to. Voila. So the eyes, I would end up moving over to the left. Now the actual eye sockets that I have on here are actually part of the body. Oops, the head. There we go. So I can just simply go in, select these, and move them over. I will use the eyedropper tool to select the main color, and I'm then, if I paint now, I'll paint in the eyeballs and it'll ruin the eyeballs there. I want to paint the opposite, so what I do is Shift Control I, or if you go to Select and then Inverse, that way you get the inverse, then I can just fix this area. Voila. You gotta be careful though so I don't paint everywhere. I just needed to fix that area. Voila. Then I can put the eyes back. Now he's kind of leaning out to the side. If I really wanted to, I could go into the legs and kind of chop off this bottom so that it's flat still. Voila. So there we have the legs. Then I would maybe want to do the same thing with the arms. On this layer I can select one arm here, and I could leave them the same if I wanted to, or maybe just move them a tiny bit. In this case I think that this would be good, a tiny bit. Alright, so there we kind of have the basics for kind of breaking it down and moving stuff around so that I can get a different look. So now I have the idle position. Typically I do this all the way through, and then I would probably collapse all of these layers. So if I select all of them, I can right click merge layers, or I can just do Control E for urge. I urge the layers, and there we have it, one layer. Then I would go ahead and just call this layer player 1 underscore idle, and I could ungroup it. I don't really need it in a folder anymore. There's player 1 idle. So I basically want to do that and create the rest of my sheet here. We take a look at it. I've kind of broken it down to, we've got my idle position, we've got the walking all the way till the end, and then we've got this duck, a jump, and getting hurt. So, and this is kind of really basic here. If I really wanted to, I could actually go in and duplicate some of these to make them more interesting. So like the hurt one, for example, I could literally just drag it down to create a duplicate, move it over. select the whole area. Let's get a red. Maybe bring the opacity down and I can paint it red. I could also change the modes, maybe just overlay. And I could do more than one if I wanted it to have more of a blinking red, if I wanted to. And I could also do more positions for the jumping. But this is really, really basic, just kind of getting the idea of it. But typically, I'd probably do a row for ducking, a row for jumping, and then a small row for like getting hurt, taking damage. And then we could go through and we could do the idle. We could do one on both sides. So if I wanted to, what I would end up doing is I'd end up duplicating these, moving them over. And this last one here, I would just go to Edit, Transform, Flip. Let's see. Make sure I have the right one selected. Video glitching. Delete that layer. There we go. Then I would take this one and go to Edit, Transform, Flip horizontally. And there we have it going from the front to the right, back to the front, and then to the left. That way it'll look like he's going back and forth from the left to the right. Of course, I'd want to put the eyeballs back in here so that it doesn't look all weird. And I could go through and edit and fix any positions that I need to do that. So what I'll do is I'll save a copy of this sprite sheet itself on the shared drive so you can kind of use this as a template. And then you can go from there. If you have time to create more rows, you can do a few for ducking, jumping, and taking damage or getting hurt, or like when the character dies and you got to start all over. And those are the basics. You could do one for walk and one for run, but for now we'll probably just go for a walk because that may be all we have time for. So you can see that this is pretty extensive just for the walking. We have the basic tilt kind of 3/4 pose here, and then the legs get closer, they kind of start to cross over, and then the legs are spread apart like a contact pose, and then they start to shift closer back together, so it looks like we've got the illusion of him walking when we put it in there.